June 1944. Northern France. The German High Command is watching. Through their binoculars, they see an entire American armored division. Tanks rolling into position, radio chatter crackling through the air, the unmistakable hum of a military buildup. Hundreds of vehicles, thousands of troops, a force capable of changing the tide of war. But something is wrong, because none of it is real. The tanks, inflatable rubber. The radio chatter, scripted recordings played on loop. The soldiers, a handful of men with sound equipment, hiding in the shadows. This is not a military operation. This is theater. And the stage is the European battlefield. Music, low, mysterious strings begin. Welcome to the story of the Ghost Army, a top-secret unit of artists, designers, sound engineers, and creative misfits who fought World War II not with bullets, but with deception. They painted fake camps. They broadcast phantom radio signals. They created entire armies out of thin air. And for decades, no one knew they existed. How did a group of painters and set designers help win the deadliest war in human history? What happens when creativity becomes a weapon? And why were their missions classified for over 40 years? Sound, typewriter clacking, official stamp. This is the story of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The story of the men who lied to save lives. The story of the Ghost Army. To understand the Ghost Army, you have to understand war itself. By 1944, World War II had already consumed millions of lives. Europe was a chessboard, and every move mattered. But warfare wasn't just about tanks and guns anymore. It was about information, misdirection, making your enemy believe you were somewhere you weren't. The British had pioneered this with Operation Fortitude, a massive deception campaign that convinced Hitler the D-Day invasion would happen at Calais, not Normandy. They used fake radio traffic, double agents, and dummy equipment. It worked. The Germans held back crucial divisions, waiting for an invasion that never came. The Americans were paying attention. In early 1944, the U.S. Army assembled an experimental unit unlike anything in military history. They didn't recruit infantrymen or tank commanders. They recruited artists, fashion designers, sound engineers, radio actors, men from New York advertising agencies, Hollywood studios, and art schools across America. Their mission? To become a traveling theater of war, to impersonate real military units, to trick the Germans into making fatal mistakes. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, soon to be known as the Ghost Army, consisted of 1,100 men divided into specialized units. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers handled visual deception. The Signal Company created fake radio networks. The Sonic Company, this was the wild part, carried massive speakers that could project the sound of tank battalions from miles away. They trained in secret. They were forbidden from telling even their families what they did. And in June 1944, just weeks after D-Day, they shipped out to France. Most of them had never seen combat. Many had barely finished basic training. But they were about to enter the most dangerous theater of war on Earth, armed with nothing but rubber, paint, and imagination. September 1944. Luxembourg. The Ghost Army's first real test comes near the town of Luxembourg City. The 23rd is ordered to impersonate the 6th Armored Division, a real unit that's being secretly repositioned for a major offensive. If the Germans discover the 6th has moved, they'll reinforce their lines. Thousands could die. So the Ghost Army moves in. They arrive at night, under cover of darkness. Within hours, they transform an empty field into a bustling military camp. Inflatable tanks, each one weighing just 60 pounds but looking identical to a 30-ton Sherman, are positioned in formations. Fake artillery pieces. Dummy supply depots. One soldier later recalled, "We'd inflate a tank in 15 minutes. It looked so real, even we'd do a double take." But visual deception was only half the illusion. The Signal Company began broadcasting fake radio traffic, mimicking the communication patterns of a real armored division. The messages were mundane, supply requests, weather reports, shift changes. But to German radio interceptors, it was proof an entire division was camped nearby. Then came the sonic deception. The 603RD sound engineers set up their speakers, enormous devices that could blast pre-recorded battle noises up to 15 miles away. The sound of tanks moving, trucks, convoys, heavy machinery, all of it looping through the night. A German reconnaissance report from that week noted, heavy armor concentration detected near Luxembourg. Estimate, 200 vehicles, 3,000 troops. The real number? 30 men and a handful of rubber props. The deception worked. The 6th Armored Division repositioned without German interference. The offensive succeeded. The Ghost Army was just getting started. Over the next 11 months, the Ghost Army would conduct over 20 major deceptions across France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Germany. But this wasn't just about setting up props and walking away. To sell the illusion, Ghost Army soldiers had to become the units they were impersonating. They wore the shoulder patches of other divisions. They visited local bars and cafes casually, mentioning their fake unit assignments. They knew German spies were listening. They knew every word mattered. Private Arthur Shilstone, a fashion illustrator from New York, later wrote in his diary, "We were actors on the deadliest stage imaginable. One wrong line and people died. In one operation, soldiers from the 23rd entered a French village wearing 2nd Armored Division insignia. They bought drinks, flirted with locals, talked loudly about upcoming tank movements. Within days, German intelligence reports mentioned the 2nd Armored's presence in the region. It was completely false. The 2nd Armored was hundreds of miles away. But the missions weren't without danger. The Ghost Army operated on the front lines, sometimes within a mile of German positions. They were unarmed specialists, not combat infantry. If discovered, they'd be slaughtered. During Operation Viersen in March 1945, the 23rd set up a fake river crossing to divert German attention from the real crossing site. They inflated rubber pontoon bridges, projected the sound of construction crews, broadcast fake engineering chatter. German artillery opened fire. Shells rained down on the dummy site. The Ghost Army soldiers dove into foxholes, clutching their sound equipment, praying the Germans wouldn't send ground troops to investigate. Private Harold Dahl wrote, "I remember lying there, face in the mud, hearing the whistle of incoming rounds, thinking, I'm going to die protecting a rubber boat. The barrage lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the fake site was destroyed. But the real crossing, 2 miles south, went off without resistance. The 9th Army crossed the Rhine. The Ghost Army had done its job. But the cost of deception weighed heavily. March 1945. The Rhine River. The war is nearly over, but Germany is fighting with the desperation of a cornered animal. The Rhine is the last natural barrier between the Allies and Berlin. Crossing it will cost lives. Thousands of them. Unless the Germans are looking the wrong way. Operation Viersen is the Ghost Army's most ambitious mission yet. The 9th Army plans to cross the Rhine at Rheinberg. To succeed, they need the Germans to expect the crossing miles away, at Düsseldorf. The Ghost Army is ordered to create an entire phantom assault. They deploy everything. Inflatable tanks positioned in attack formations. Sonic trucks broadcasting the sound of massing armor. Fake supply convoys moving through nearby towns. Radio operators sending fabricated orders for bridging equipment, ammunition, medical supplies. For 3 days, the Ghost Army performs the greatest show of their war. At night, the sonic trucks play their recordings, the metallic grind of tank treads, the roar of diesel engines, the shouts of soldiers. The sounds echo across the river, carried by the wind straight to German positions. A captured German officer later testified, "We were certain the main attack would come at Düsseldorf. All our intelligence confirmed it. We reinforced the sector with 2 panzer divisions. On March 23, 1945, the 9th Army crossed at Rheinberg. They met minimal resistance. The 2 panzer divisions, Germany's precious reserves, were miles away, defending against an army that didn't exist. Historians estimate Operation Viersen saved between 10,000 and 15,000 Allied lives. Not a single shot was fired by the Ghost Army. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. The Ghost Army's war is over. Over 20 missions. Thousands of enemy troops deceived. Countless lives saved through illusion and art. But they can't tell anyone. As the soldiers returned home, they were ordered to never speak of their service. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was classified top secret. Their techniques were too valuable, too sensitive. The Cold War was beginning, and deception would matter again. For 40 years, the Ghost Army didn't exist. Not in history books. Not in war memorials. Not even in their own family's understanding of what they'd done. Bill Blass became a fashion icon. Ellsworth Kelly became one of America's greatest abstract painters. Arthur Singer illustrated birds for National Geographic. No one knew they'd also won a war. In 1996, the Ghost Army's records were finally declassified. The artists could finally tell their story. So what does the Ghost Army teach us? On the surface, it's a story about creativity under pressure, about artists using their gifts in the unlikeliest of places. But dig deeper, and it reveals something profound about the nature of war, truth, and human ingenuity. First, creativity is a form of intelligence. The military mind traditionally values strength, discipline, firepower. But the Ghost Army proved that imagination can be just as powerful as ammunition. These men didn't overpower the enemy, they outsmarted them. They understood that perception shapes reality, especially in war. Think about it. A German tank commander sees an Allied division through his binoculars. His brain processes it as real. His command diverts resources. Reinforcements move. Battle plans change. And all of it stems from a rubber prop and a sound recording. The Ghost Army exploited a fundamental truth. We believe what we see, even when we shouldn't. Second, deception in war is morally complex. Sound, ethical question mark, quiet dissonance. We're taught that lying is wrong. But in war, deception saves lives. Every German soldier, tricked by the Ghost Army, was a German soldier, not shooting at real American troops. Every misdirected artillery barrage was one that didn't kill. The Ghost Army operated in a moral gray zone. They lied. They manipulated. They turned creativity into weaponry. But their lies prevented bloodshed. Their illusions protected lives. Is that heroism or trickery? Maybe it's both. Private Jack Macy later said, "We didn't kill anyone. We just made them think we were somewhere we weren't. If that's a sin, I'll take it over the alternative." Third, history forgets the quiet heroes. For 40 years, the Ghost Army was erased. While infantry divisions got parades and monuments, these men went home in silence. Their contribution was too secret to celebrate, too strange to fit the narrative of conventional heroism. But their impact was undeniable. Historians now believe the Ghost Army's operations collectively saved tens of thousands of lives. They shortened battles. They protected real soldiers. They changed outcomes. And yet, until 1996, they couldn't even tell their children. This raises a question. How many other heroes exist in the margins of history? How many people saved lives, changed the world, or shaped events, but did so quietly, secretly, without recognition? The Ghost Army reminds us that history is incomplete. The stories we know are only a fraction of what happened. And the people we celebrate are often not the only ones who mattered. Finally, art is more powerful than we think. We live in a world that often undervalues creativity. Art is seen as decoration, entertainment, a luxury. But the Ghost Army proved that art is a force. It shapes perception. It influences decisions. It can stop bullets without firing a shot. These men were painters, designers, actors, sound engineers, professions that society often dismisses as frivolous. And yet, in the crucible of war, their skills became essential. Their creativity became tactical. Their art became survival. Ellsworth Kelly, who would go on to become a legendary abstract artist, once said, "The Ghost Army taught me that art isn't separate from life. It is life. It's how we solve problems, communicate ideas, and change reality." In a world increasingly driven by data and algorithms, the Ghost Army is a reminder that human creativity, messy, intuitive, imaginative, remains irreplaceable. And there's one more lesson. The Ghost Army succeeded because they embraced the absurd. Think about it. Rubber tanks, recorded sound effects, soldiers pretending to be other soldiers. On paper, it sounds ridiculous, like a Monty Python sketch. But they committed fully. They treated every fake camp like a real one. They rehearsed their radio scripts. They painted props with meticulous detail. They understood that absurdity, when executed with conviction, becomes believable. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson. Sometimes the most unconventional ideas are the ones that change everything. Today, the Ghost Army is finally getting recognition. In 2013, a documentary brought their story to mainstream audiences. In 2022, Congress awarded the surviving members and their families the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors in America. Only a handful of veterans were still alive to receive it. But for them, the recognition wasn't about medals. It was about finally being able to tell the truth. Rick Bayer, the documentary filmmaker who helped uncover their story, said, "These men carried a secret for decades. They won battles without firing shots. They saved lives without spilling blood. And they did it all in silence. That's a special kind of courage. The Ghost Army operated in 20 missions across Europe. They impersonated entire divisions. They deceived an enemy that was watching, listening, and hunting them. And they succeeded. Not because they were soldiers in the traditional sense, but because they were artists who understood that reality is negotiable. That perception can be shaped. That sometimes the best weapon isn't the loudest or the deadliest, it's the most creative. War is often remembered for its violence, its destruction, its loss. But the Ghost Army reminds us that war is also about ingenuity, about people using whatever skills they have to protect what matters, about painters, actors, and designers stepping into the fire and emerging as heroes. Their story is a testament to the power of creativity, to the idea that art, imagination, and intelligence can stand toe-to-toe with brute force and win. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. Because in a world that still faces conflict, deception, and division, we need people who think differently, who see solutions where others see impossibility, who can turn rubber and sound into an army. The Ghost Army may have been declassified, but their spirit lives on. If this story moved you, subscribe to The Quiet Font, where we uncover the forgotten stories that shaped our world, the untold chapters, the quiet heroes, the truths hiding in the margins of history. Because every story deserves to be heard.